You know, the living world is this incredible, sprawling, sometimes chaotic library of organisms. But how does science even begin to read the books if they don't have titles? Today, we're going to dive into the really elegant system we've built to give every single living thing one universal name, a name that lets us share knowledge across any border, any language.
And just to get your head around the sheer scale of this challenge, look at this number. We're talking nearly 1.8 million species that scientists have managed to identify and describe. But here's the wild part. That number's not static. It's a moving target, constantly growing, as we explore new places, from the deepest parts of the ocean to the tops of jungle canopies, finding new life all the time.
And that leads to a huge question, right? With millions of species scattered all over the planet, with people speaking thousands of different languages, how do we possibly avoid just total confusion? How can we be absolutely sure that everyone's on the same page? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together today.
So before we had this elegant system, things were, well, a mess. A total naming crisis. The problem was pretty simple. Local, common names for plants and animals change from place to place. Sometimes they even change from one town to the next, and that creates a massive barrier for scientists trying to work together.
Okay, let's take a look at this guy, for example. Now, depending on where you are in the Americas, you might call it a cougar, or a puma, or a mountain lion. Some people even call it a panther. That's 4 different names for the exact same cat. But in the universal language of science, it only has one name, Puma concolor. It's precise, it's unique, and it's understood everywhere.
And the fix for this whole mess is a process called nomenclature. It's basically a system for creating standardized names. But, and this is a key rule, you can't just go around naming things. You first have to know exactly what it is. That means the very first step is always identification. You have to correctly describe the organism before you can give it its official name.
So who's the genius who came up with this brilliant fix? For that, we can thank a Swedish botanist named Carolus Linnaeus. Back in the 18th century, he developed this simple yet super elegant system that biologists are still using all over the world today. He called it binomial nomenclature. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Bi just means two, and nomen means name. So it's a two-name system. It's so effective that now we have official international rule books, one for plants called the ICBN and another for animals, the ICZN, just to make sure everyone is following the exact same principles.
All right, to see how this works in practice, let's use an example you've probably eaten, the common mango. To a biologist, it's not just a mango, it's Mangifera indica. So let's break down what those 2 words actually mean.
The first part, Mangifera, is the genus. The easiest way to think of this is like a surname or a last name. It tells us the broader family of related organisms the mango belongs to. The second part, indica, that's the specific epithet. Think of that like a first name. It's the unique tag for this one particular species inside that genus. You put them together and you get one unique 2-part name. Now, for a system like this to work everywhere for everyone, you've got to have some ground rules, right? Linnaeus knew this, so he set up a few simple, clear principles to make sure these names are written and understood the exact same way no matter where you are in the world.
Let's use our mango example again to walk through the rules. First, the names are usually in Latin. This was a smart move because Latin is a dead language, meaning its words don't change their meaning over time. It's super stable, and they're always written in italics. Second, the genus name, Mangifera, always starts with a capital letter. Third, the specific epithet, indica, is always lowercase. And you see that little lin at the end? That's actually a shout-out to Linnaeus himself. It gives him credit as the first person to officially describe this species.
Okay, so naming things is step 1. But what do you do once you have all of these names? You need to organize them, right? And that's where classification comes in. It's like building a giant, perfectly organized filing system for all living things. Basically, classification is just the process of grouping organisms into different categories based on characteristics they share. Each of these categories, whether it's a huge group or a tiny one, gets a scientific name, taxa. So plants is a taxon, but so is wheat. They're just categories at different levels. To really see how this filing system works, let's trace an example, and we'll go from the very specific to the very general. We'll start right here with something we all recognize, a single dog breed. The Alsatian, or as you might know it, the German Shepherd.
Okay, now let's zoom out one level. We all know an Alsatian is a type of dog. So this broader category,
This taxon we call dogs includes Alsatians, but it also includes poodles, beagles, and every other dog breed you can think of.
Let's zoom out again. Dogs belong to an even larger taxon, mammals. Now this group also includes cats and whales and even us. We all share key things like having body hair and external ears, and that's what puts us all in the same big cabinet in this filing system.
And for our final zoom out, mammals are, of course, a type of animal. So you can see how these categories, these taxa, all fit neatly inside one another, from the most specific to the most general. It's this awesome nested hierarchy that gives every single living thing an organized place in the world.
So, you see how all these pieces, the identifying, the naming, the classifying, they all fit together? They're not just random tasks. They're actually the fundamental building blocks of a whole field of biology. And that field is called taxonomy, and it follows this really neat logical order. First, you characterize an organism. You observe all its features. Then you identify exactly what it is. After that, you classify it, putting it into all the right groups. And finally, you give it that standardized name through nomenclature. Characterize, identify, classify, name. It's a beautiful process.
But wait, it gets even bigger. Taxonomy fits inside an even grander science called systematics. And as this quote says, systematics doesn't just ask what is it and where does it fit, it asks the biggest question of all. How is it related to everything else? It uses our classification system to map out the evolutionary family tree of life itself.
So when you think about it, every scientific name, from Mangifera indica to Puma concolor, is so much more than just a label. It's the final chapter in a story of discovery. It marks the moment a tiny piece of life's huge puzzle was found, studied, and given its proper place in our shared library of knowledge. And with millions of species still out there, undiscovered, it makes you wonder, right? What other incredible stories are out there, just waiting for us to find them?